When Rebecca saw her daughter standing at the doorstep, drenched in rain with a suitcase that looked heavier than her heart, she didn't ask a single question. She simply opened the door. The last time Emily had been here, she'd stormed out, shouting, "You just want to control me, mother. Mark loves me for who I am, not what I have." Now, years later, the same daughter stood trembling, eyes hollow, her once carefully painted nails bitten to the quick. Rebecca didn't say, "I told you so." She just said softly, "Come inside, dear." The old house smelled of chamomile tea and rain-soaked wood. Rebecca placed a towel over Emily's shoulders, her movements quiet and deliberate, the way a mother touches something fragile, afraid it might shatter with too much care. Emily's voice cracked as she whispered, "He's gone." Rebecca nodded, though she already knew. News had a way of fending its way to mothers. Through whispers, looks in the silence that fills, empty phones. Mark had left months ago, abandoning his business, his home, and his wife's, leaving behind debts so deep that even Emily's name was now tangled in them. For days, Rebecca had watched from afar, wanting to help but refusing to interfere. She had always promised herself she wouldn't rescue Emily again, not after the way she had chosen Mark over her family. But now, looking at her daughter, thinner, broken, and afraid, Rebecca's heart made the decision before her mind could. The next morning, Rebecca woke early and found Emily sitting at the kitchen table staring at an unpaid bill. Her eyes were swollen, her voice almost gone. "He took everything," Emily said. "The savings, even sold my car. I don't know how he did it. I thought we were partners." Rebecca poured tea into 2 chipped mugs and sat across from her. "You signed what he asked you to, didn't you?" Emily finched. "He said it was just a business document." "I didn't read it." Rebecca's breath caught in her throat. Years of pain condensed into that one sentence. She could see flashes of the past, the wedding day. Emily laughing in Mark's arms, ignoring the mother who'd raised her alone after her father's death. Rebecca had seen the warning signs back then, the charm too polished, the promises too sweet, but every word of caution had been dismissed as jealousy or control. Now here they were. Rebecca reached across the table and took Emily's hand. "What matters is you're safe now. We'll take it one step at a time." Emily looked up, guilt twisting her expression. "Why are you helping me after everything I said? After how I treated you?" Rebecca smiled faintly. "Because I'm your mother. And sometimes love doesn't need an explanation. It just needs patience." Days turned into weeks. Emily stayed in her childhood room, the same one she had left years ago with dreams of a glamorous life. The posters were faded now, the corners curling, but her old vanity still stood by the window. The mirror cracked, reflecting a face that no longer belonged to the carefree girl who once stood before it. She found small ways to help around the house, folding laundry, cooking simple meals, sweeping the porch. But Rebecca noticed how often she'd pause mid-task, lost in thought. At night, when the house grew still, Rebecca could hear Emily crying quietly through the wall. She never went in. Some lessons she knew needed silence to sink in. One afternoon, Rebecca went to the lawyer's office in town, an old friend, Jonas Hale. He was a patient man with kind eyes, the same lawyer who had handled her late husband's estate years ago. "Jonas," she said softly, closing the door behind her. "I need your help." He looked at her with concern. "It's about Emily, isn't it?" Rebecca nodded. "Mark's left her with nothing, but something about it doesn't feel right. I think he forged her signature on several documents. Property transfers, loan papers. She's too broken to even look at them, but I can't stand by and watch." Jonas frowned. "Do you have the papers?" Rebecca pulled out a folder, worn, creased, edges bent, and containing everything she had quietly collected from Emily's mail and bank notices. "I don't want her to know yet," she added. "Not until we're sure. She's been through enough." Jonas studied her face for a long moment. "You're protecting her the hard way, Rebecca." She smiled sadly. "It's the only way that lasts." Back home, Emily was sitting on the porch steps, watching the sunset dip behind the trees. The colors spilled across the sky, gold, crimson, and a kind of sorrowful blue that mirrored her own feelings. Rebecca sat beside her without speaking. For a while, neither said a word. The crickets began their song, the evening breeze carrying the scent of the sea from miles away. "Do you ever think about Dad?" Emily asked suddenly. Rebecca smiled faintly. "Every day." Emily hesitated. I don't remember much about him. Just his voice. He used to sing to me at night. Rebecca's eyes softened. He loved you more than anything. There was a pause, long and heavy. Then Emily whispered, I wish I'd listened to you. Rebecca reached out, brushing a stray lock of hair from her daughter's face. Life has its own way of teaching us. I just thank God you're still here to learn. That night, Rebecca sat by her window, watching the rain return. She thought of the letter she'd once written but never sent. The one she'd drafted years ago, after Emily's wedding, when she felt she'd lost her daughter forever. It had begun with the words, one day you'll understand the kind of love that doesn't chase. It waits. She smiled faintly now, realizing that day had finally come. Emily had come home, and not as the proud, defiant woman she'd left as, but as someone ready to rebuild. And Rebecca, though still wounded, knew this was the start of something new, a second chance wrapped in quiet forgiveness. Outside, the storm softened to a drizzle. Inside, mother and daughter sat in the same house that had once echoed with silence, now filled again with the sound of healing. Slow, quiet, but certain. The mornings at Rebecca's house began with the smell of coffee and the sound of birds on the porch. Emily would rise early, her body still heavy with the weight of sleepless nights, and help her mother prepare breakfast. There was a quiet rhythm to their days now, not joyful yet, but steady. Like two hearts learning how to beat in the same room again. Emily had taken a small job at the local bakery. It wasn't glamorous. Ford dusted her clothes, and her hands were often red from scrubbing trays, but it was honest work. For the first time in years, she earned money that no one could take from her. Every morning, she tied her hair back, put on her apron, and walked to town. The people there remembered her. The girl who once threw expensive parties by the beach, who used to drive a shiny white car with tinted windows. Now, she took the bus, carrying her lunch in a brown paper bag. Some smiled politely when they saw her. Others whispered. She heard them, of course. That's her, the one whose husband ran off with everything. She used to look down on everyone. She's working at the bakery now, imagine that. Each word stung, but Emily kept her head down. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Somewhere deep inside, a quiet determination had begun to take root. Rebecca would sometimes walk to the bakery window, pretending to browse just to see her daughter working. Emily didn't notice her most days. She was too focused. Her brow furrowed, her movements careful and deliberate. Watching her like that, Rebecca felt something shift in her heart. Pride, perhaps mixed with the ache of seeing your child finally growing up through pain. At night when Emily came home, Rebecca would have soup ready, simple meals but warm. They'd eat together, often in silence, sometimes sharing small conversations about customers, recipes, or the weather. Once, Emily said quietly, I didn't know work could feel peaceful. Rebecca smiled. That's what happens when you earn your own peace. Meanwhile, Jonas had begun his quiet investigation. He discovered that Mark had been taking loans under Emily's name for almost 2 years, using forged documents, false business accounts, and even her father's old company registration number. It was clear he had planned his escape long before leaving her. When Rebecca visited Jonas's office again, he handed her a folder filled with evidence. Everything you suspected was right, he said. He forged multiple signatures. We can file for fraud and clear her record, but we'll need to be discreet. Rebecca's jaw tightened. Do it, but please, don't tell Emily yet. Let her find her footing first. Jonas nodded. You're protecting her from the truth? Rebecca looked down, her voice calm but steady. I'm protecting her from the weight of it. She's learning who she is again. If she fans out now, it might break her spirit. Weeks passed. The leaves began to turn gold, the air carried a chill, and the smell of cinnamon and baked bread followed Emily home each evening. One evening, she found Rebecca on the porch, knitting by the lamplight. Emily hesitated, then sat beside her. Mom, she began softly, I've been thinking maybe I could start over. Not just work. Maybe study again. Or open something small, like a cafe someday. Rebecca looked at her, eyes glimmering. That sounds wonderful. I don't know where to start, Emily admitted. Everything feels too big. Too far away. Rebecca reached out, squeezing her hand. You start small. With what's in front of you. One day, it'll lead where you need to be. Emily nodded slowly. There was something comforting in her mother's certainty. The kind of wisdom she had once mistaken for control. Now she understood it was love. At the bakery, Emily's boss, Mrs. Carter, noticed her hard work. She began giving her more responsibility, managing orders, handling customers, even helping with the books. Emily started to smile again. One afternoon, as she was arranging pastries, a customer came in, an older woman with kind eyes. She paused, looking at Emily closely. "You're Rebecca Lawson's daughter, aren't you?" Emily froze. "Yes, ma'am." The woman smiled. "Your mother helped me once, years ago after my husband passed. She lent me money when no one else would. Told me to pay it forward someday. I never forgot that." Emily blinked, surprised. "She never told me." "She wouldn't," the woman said warmly. "She doesn't do good for credit. She does it because she understands loss." That night, Emily told Rebecca about the encounter. Rebecca simply smiled and said, "The world's round, dear. What you send out always fends its way back." Meanwhile, Jonas called with an update. "Rebecca, we've gathered enough evidence to press charges. Mark's been located overseas. The authorities are moving in." Rebecca exhaled slowly. "Thank you, Jonas. When it's time, I'll tell her." After hanging up, she sat quietly, staring at the photo on her mantle, her late husband holding a 5-year-old Emily at the beach, both smiling wide. She whispered softly, "She's fending her way back, James. She's becoming the woman you always hoped she'd be." Days later, Emily came home with her first full paycheck. She placed it on the kitchen table and said, "For rent." Rebecca looked at it, then at her daughter. "This house will always be your home. Keep it. Save it for your dream." Emily shook her head. "No, Mom. I need to start giving back. You've done enough." Rebecca hesitated, then smiled and accepted it. Not for the money, but for what it meant. It was the first true bridge between them in years. That night, as they washed dishes side by side, Emily said quietly, "I used to think love meant being protected from pain. Now I think it's about facing it, and still having someone beside you." Rebecca's throat tightened, but she said nothing. She didn't need to. Her silence said everything. The next morning, a letter arrived, official-looking, stamped and sealed. Rebecca hid it in her drawer before Emily could see. It was from Jonas, confirmation that Mark's fraud case had been approved, and Emily's debts would soon be erased. Rebecca folded the letter carefully and placed it under her late husband's photograph. "Not yet," she whispered. "She needs to know who she is before she knows what she has." Outside, the sun rose over the sea, bright, relentless, and full of quiet promise. For the first time in years, Rebecca felt peace taking shape again, not the peace of having everything, but the kind that comes after losing it all and still standing. Winter came softly that year, wrapping the seaside town in a hush of gray mornings and early nights. Rebecca kept the house warm with the smell of wood smoke and cinnamon, while Emily worked longer hours at the bakery, saving every penny she could. There was something healing about her routine. The steady rhythm of kneading dough, the hum of the ovens, the quiet good mornings from Mrs. Carter. She was rebuilding her dignity, one loaf of bread at a time. But even as Emily began to stand again, Rebecca knew a storm of truth was waiting on the horizon, one that could either destroy her daughter's newfound strength or finally set her free. One evening, Jonas called. "It's done," he said gently. "Mark has been arrested. The court accepted the fraud evidence. The debts tied to Emily's name will be cleared within weeks." Rebecca closed her eyes, relief washing over her like the tide. "Thank you, Jonas. You've done more than I can ever repay." He paused. "There's something else. Your husband's old trust fund, the one left in Emily's name. It was never claimed. It's still intact. Once her record clears, she'll be eligible to receive it." Rebecca's heart skipped. She had known about the trust, of course, but she had deliberately left it untouched. Her husband, James, had always said, "Let her find her own way before she inherits mine." Now, as Rebecca hung up, she stared at the flickering free light and thought of her daughter, the little girl who used to collect seashells by the beach, who once believed love was about being adored, not about enduring. Yes, the time had come. The next morning, Rebecca waited for Emily to return from work. The winter light streamed softly through the window, catching dust motes in its glow. Emily entered, cheeks flushed from the cold, her apron still dusted with four. Rebecca motioned toward the table. "Sit down, dear. There's something we need to talk about." Emily frowned, sensing the weight in her mother's tone. Rebecca reached for a folder, the one she'd been keeping locked in her drawer, and placed it on the table. You remember I told you that sometimes love protects in silence? Emily nodded, cautious. Rebecca exhaled. While you were rebuilding, I was doing some work of my own. I spoke with Jonas. We uncovered everything Mark did. The forged signatures, the loans, the fake accounts. The court has cleared your name. You owe nothing, Emily. For a moment, Emily just stared at her. Then her hands began to tremble. What do you mean? The debts? All of it? Gone, Rebecca said softly. Every last one. Tears filled Emily's eyes, but her face was unreadable, disbelief and relief colliding all at once. You knew? All this time? I did. Why didn't you tell me? Her voice cracked. Rebecca's eyes glistened. Because you needed to believe you could stand again on your own. 2 feet. If I'd told you sooner, it would have felt like rescue, not redemption. Emily shook her head, trying to absorb the words. You let me struggle. You let me face people's judgment. You let me fend yourself, Rebecca mished quietly. I wasn't punishing you, Emily. I was waiting for you to remember who you were before him, before the lies. Emily pressed her hands to her face, sobbing silently. I thought I'd lost everything, Mom. Rebecca reached across the table and took her daughter's shaking hands. You did lose things, but not everything. You still had me. And you had yourself even when you thought you didn't. For the first time in years, Emily didn't pull away. She leaned forward and let her mother hold her. Really hold her. Like the little girl who used to run to her after falling from her bicycle. Later that night, Rebecca brought out another envelope, this one older, sealed in faded wax. This, she said gently, was from your father. He wrote it before he passed. I've kept it until now. Emily's fingers trembled as she opened it. Her father's handwriting was neat but faint, time having softened the ink. My dearest Emily, it began, if you are reading this, it means I'm not there to guide you. But I trust your mother will be. Life will test you, my girl. You'll make mistakes, I mean, we all do, but remember, money can be earned and love can be rebuilt, but character, that's the only thing that can't be replaced. Your mother and I saved for your future, not to make your life easy, but to give you a foundation once you've learned what truly matters. When you are ready, she'll know, and she'll give it to you. Love, Dad. Tears dripped onto the letter as Emily clutched it to her chest. He believed in me, she whispered. Rebecca smiled softly. He always did. He just wanted you to believe in yourself, too. The days that followed felt lighter, though Emily's emotions still came in waves. Sometimes she laughed easily, and sometimes she cried quietly when no one was watching. She had spent years chained to a man's deceit. Now she was learning the strange freedom of peace. One morning, Rebecca took her to the beach house, the one her husband had built decades ago, long left unused. The salty wind carried the scent of seaweed and memory. The windows were dusty, the porch creaked, but the foundation was still strong. Your father wanted you to have this someday, Rebecca said, unlocking the door. But I thought, maybe it's time we use it for something better. Emily stepped inside. The air smelled of salt and old wood. She ran her hand over the walls, her eyes softening. It feels like him, she whispered. Rebecca smiled. It does. Maybe this house can be more than a memory. Maybe it can become a place for others who need shelter. Women who've been where you were. We could help them start over. Emily turned to her mother, her eyes shining through tears. You really think we could do that? I think we already have, Rebecca said gently. Starting with you. That night, Emily sat on the porch, watching the waves crash against the rocks. She felt her father's words echoing in her heart, her mother's quiet strength beside her. And for the first time in years, she felt whole. She wasn't the woman who'd been fooled or broken. She was the woman who had learned, endured, and risen again. And in that realization, forgiveness came, not as a word, but as a peace that settled deep within her chest. Inside, Rebecca watched her daughter from the window. The girl who once left with pride had returned with humility. And the woman sitting out there now, silent, strong, peaceful, was the daughter she'd always hoped would come home. Rebecca whispered a prayer of gratitude, her voice soft as the tide. Thank you, James. She's home. The days that followed unfolded gently, like the sea smoothing its own ripples. Rebecca and Emily began visiting the old beach house more often, scrubbing its dusty floors, opening its windows to let in the light. and breathing new life into a place that had once been a ghost of their past. The laughter that returned was soft at first, hesitant, fragile, but it was laughter all the same. It echoed through the halls like music, bouncing off the walls that had seen both joy and loss. For Rebecca, every sound felt like a prayer being answered. One afternoon, while Rebecca painted the porch railing white, Emily brought her a glass of lemonade and said, "Mom, I've been thinking we could turn one of the back rooms into a small office, maybe where women can meet counselors or lawyers. You know, for those trying to escape what I went through." Rebecca looked at her daughter. This woman who had once believed love was about luxury and adoration, now talking about purpose and protection. A slow smile spread across her face. "That's a beautiful idea." Emily nodded. I want the pain to mean something. I don't want it to have been for nothing." Rebecca reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "Pain is never for nothing, Emily. It either breaks you or builds you, and you chose the latter." Weeks passed. The beach house began to transform. Fresh curtains fluttered in the ocean breeze. The kitchen smelled of paint and new beginnings, and every room began to carry a trace of hope. One evening, as the sun melted into the sea, Emily found an envelope in the mail. Handwriting was familiar, too familiar. Her heart clenched. She walked inside, her hands trembling. Rebecca noticed immediately. "What is it?" Emily hesitated, then handed it over. "It's from him." Rebecca's eyes darkened slightly, though her tone remained calm. "Do you want me to read it?" "First?" Emily shook her head. "No, I need to." She opened the letter. The words were messy, uneven, written from a place of guilt and regret. "Emily," it began, "I don't know if you'll ever forgive me. I'm writing from prison. Everything fell apart. The people I thought were my friends turned their backs. And I see now that I destroyed the only good thing I ever had, you. I don't expect you to reply. I just need you to know I was wrong. About money, about love, about everything. You didn't deserve any of it. I hope one day you've in peace, even if it's far away from me." The letter ended without a signature, only a shaky line where his name should have been. Emily read it twice. Her lips trembled, but her eyes stayed dry. She folded the letter carefully and placed it on the table. Rebecca watched her quietly. "What do you feel?" she asked. Emily thought for a long moment. "Nothing," she said softly. "No anger, no sadness, just nothing." Rebecca nodded, her eyes softening. "That's not emptiness, dear. That's closure." Emily exhaled deeply, as if letting out the last of a storm that had lived inside her for years. Spring came early that year. The beach house was finished, newly painted, filled with light, and ready to open its doors. They decided to name it the Shore Haven, a quiet shelter for women and children needing a place to start again. On opening day, a small crowd gathered, local volunteers, a few neighbors, and even Mrs. Carter from the bakery holding flowers. Rebecca stood beside her daughter, proud but humble. Emily gave a short speech, her voice steady. "This house belonged to my parents. It was once a symbol of comfort and family. For a long time, I forgot what those words meant. But my mother reminded me, not through lectures, but through love. Today, this home becomes a place where others can find that same strength." There was gentle applause, the kind that comes from hearts rather than hands. After the ceremony, Emily stood on the porch, watching the sea. She turned to her mother and said, "You know, I used to think love was about someone saving you. But now I see what real love gives you the courage to save yourself." Rebecca smiled, her eyes glistening. "And that's what your father always wanted for you." They stood there for a long time, side by side, the wind lifting their hair and the ocean stretching endlessly before them. That evening, as twilight settled, Rebecca walked down to the beach alone. The waves rolled in, slow and steady, the same way they had when James used to walk with her here, holding her hand and talking about dreams they'd never finished together. She sat on the sand, closed her eyes, and whispered into the wind. "She's strong now, James. You'd be proud of her." The sound of the sea answered in its own language, soft, endless, eternal. She smiled faintly, tears slipping down her cheeks. "We turned our pain into purpose, love. I think that's what life was asking us to do." Later that night, Emily joined her on the porch, bringing 2 cups of tea. The stars were beginning to show, faint, trembling lights scattered across the sky. Rebecca looked at her daughter and said quietly, "Do you see them, Emily? Each one is a reminder that even in darkness there's light if you wait long enough." Emily nodded. "I think Dad would have loved this place." Rebecca smiled. "He's here. In the laughter. In the women will help. In every wave that reaches the shore." Emily leaned her head on her mother's shoulder. "I finally understand what he meant about real wealth." Rebecca turned to her, her voice soft as a lullaby. "It's never in the things we own, darling. It's in the love we give and the strength we pass on." They sat there in silence, two women who had lost almost everything, yet found something far greater: peace. The tide rose and fell. The stars shimmered. And for the first time in years, Rebecca felt her heart completely still. Not because everything was perfect, but because everything finally made sense. Sometimes, love doesn't look like saving someone from their fall. It looks like standing quietly at the bottom, waiting, praying, fight until they found the strength to rise on their own. Rebecca could have rushed in. She could have taken away every burden her daughter faced. But she knew real love isn't about rescue. It's about faith. Faith that the people you love will eventually their way back. Not because you carried them, but because you believed they could walk again. And Emily did. Through pain. Through humility. Through work that stripped away her pride and rebuilt her soul. She learned that forgiveness isn't weakness, it's freedom. And that the truest wealth a family leaves behind isn't money, property, or name. It's the love that teaches you how to stand even after the storm. So if you're listening tonight, maybe this story is for you. Maybe you've tried to save someone who didn't want saving, or maybe you're the one who had to lose everything before fending yourself again. Wherever you are, remember this. Love doesn't always arrive as comfort. Sometimes it comes as distance, silence, or lessons that hurt before they heal. Because the kind of love that endures, the kind that rebuilds homes, heals wounds, and brings peace isn't loud. It's quiet, patient, and it never stops believing.